How's it going, everybody? Today we have another disc review. Today we have a very exciting mold. This is the Zone SS from Discraft. That's right, they have continued with their SS and OS extensions, this time putting it on the ever popular Zone. If you've never seen this before, you're not familiar with the Discraft lineup, basically they have all their different molds and the names that go with them like other companies, but occasionally they'll make a new mold, and instead of making it a completely different name, they will just add a modifier to a name that already exists, because their goal is to make a similar feeling disc that just flies a bit different. So for example, Discraft has the Buzz, their most popular mid-range ever, one of the most popular mids ever, and there's a Buzz SS and OS, which are meant to have similar flights and feels, but the OS is more overstable. It's what it stands for, and SS stands for super straight, and it's a little bit straighter or flippier. So with the Zone, obviously last year or the year before, it's been a little bit, we got the Zone OS, a very overstable version of the Zone, which is already overstable, and now we've gotten the Zone SS, which in theory should be a straighter flying version of the Zone with a similar feel. I think this is a direction that some companies have gone recently, making these somewhat straighter, overstable approach discs, if that makes sense. So you still got that feel and that torque resistance, but you're gonna get a longer flight before it dumps out. And that's what they're aiming for here. Just looking at the disc initially, it doesn't feel unlike a Zone. It's definitely familiar, which I think is a success when you're trying to create a related mold. You're looking at a slightly different shoulder and profile in general, but this disc is not gonna be a stranger to Zone throwers. It reminds me immediately of the A5 from Prodigy, a disc that will probably fly somewhat like this, because that is a not quite as overstable approach disc that has a similar shape. But yeah, the feel I think is a success here, because I think it does just have a slightly different parting line, and obviously I think that's to accomplish a straighter flight. So we'll see if it actually delivers on that today with these tests. I think a successful disc here is going to be something that does fly straighter, but isn't necessarily flipping on you either, because then it wouldn't really be a Zone at that point. That's probably a different disc entirely. So we'll give it a bunch of throws, give it a good test today, and see what we can figure out. We're going to start with a backhand throw. We'll throw it nice and flat, give it a good rip, and see what happens. When we're throwing this direction today, just know there'll be anywhere from 0 to a 7-mile-an-hour headwind. The other direction, obviously a tailwind, but right now not really a breeze at all. We'll give it a rip. I guess a pretty expected result there. We did get a little bit of turn, like I said, a little bit of headwind breeze, but I also didn't throw it full power, and I threw it a little bit nose up. So surprised somewhat to see it turn that much, but I don't really know where my expectation is of how flippy this should be. I think we'll learn a lot on the forehand as well, because so many Zone throwers like the forehand, but I'm curious to see if I throw it hard on hyzer, if it'll pop up at all. That'll be interesting. Now we're gonna rip one on hyzer, try to just give it a little bit of hyzer and see if it wants to budge up, because I think that'll be something interesting to look at, to see if this disc actually hyzer flips to flat or not. It would be pretty surprised if it does, but the first flight, it gave quite a bit of turn, so we'll see if we can get it to pop up. Okay. Out of my hand, I didn't think it was gonna move up at all. As it got a little further, it budged. Like, I wouldn't say it flipped up to flat, but it definitely pushed and budged a little bit, which I think that's actually a good sign, because I think the Zone SS, like, you'd want it to be slightly understable to the normal Zone, but you don't want it to get out of control and be understable just in general. So I think seeing it just kind of push up on hyzer is perfect, because that would be just a little bit beneath what a normal Zone would do. So I like that flight a lot. We'll see what it does if we give it a little bit and hyzer next time around. And we're really going to get into it and see if it wants to flex out at all. I don't know that it will, because a normal Zone can hold a pretty long flex line, so this one I feel like should just kind of pan to the right, but we'll see. Now we're going to take the Zone SS and we are going to throw it on a bit of a turnover kind of flex line. Like I was saying, I think the way this should fly, based on what I've read and seen so far, is if I give it a baby anhyzer, I want it to kind of pan over and then maybe just come to a rest, because a normal ESP, especially normal Zone, isn't crazy overstable if you give it a good bit of anhyzer. So if this is a little bit more understable than that Zone, or the normal Zone, I would think it'll just kind of hold, but it shouldn't burn over at all. That's what we don't want to see. So let's see what it does. A little bit nose up on that one, so I didn't quite give it enough of a chance to turn over. But at least for that line, it held pretty good and even fought back a little at the end. But we'll try another one a little bit lower because I didn't give it quite, I threw it a little too high to be expecting it to turn there. I'm not disappointed in that. That was a pretty harsh flex on a very low line, so not very easy for most discs to dig out of. And it panned over pretty well. It didn't really burn over, and I think that's what you should expect out of this mold. So I'm still liking this disc. I think it's true to what I've imagined. Don't worry, we're gonna get to some forehands next because I know you zone throwers primarily are throwing forehands. We'll try this on a couple different angles and see what it does. I don't have the best forehand in the world, but anybody can forehand a zone, right? Ooh, that was nice. That was a pretty good start. I want to say that was like baby hyzer, popped up a little, rode a little to the left, and then fell. That felt like what a good beat-in zone should do. This time, we're gonna give it some more hyzer and really put a lot into it, see if it pops up or if it holds. Yeah, well that was, that was pretty nose up, so that did what you'd expect in a left to right wind. Although I will say, even as it was flying, it like nudged a little. We'll throw some more forehands though and keep dialing it in. Let's try another hyzer, keep it a little lower with the Zone OS here. Zone SS, sorry. Not bad, a little bit wobbly, but that's on me. Disc did pop up to flat, but didn't turn over, and then a nice fade. So I think it's like a well-worn in zone flight, but I like that. I think skilled forehand players will like that. We'll try a little flex shot next. Last shot I want to try here is something with a little bit of turn on it, since I think a lot of players would use this disc for this shot. Yeah, once again, pretty crummy forehand from myself there, but we did get the flight I expected once it managed to level itself out. Higher shot that still panned over before finishing. So I think this disc is in a pretty good slot. I think it's just about what Discraft would have wanted. So that's gonna do it here for the review of the Zone SS from Discraft. I think this is a highly anticipated mold. A lot of people are gonna wanna get their hands on this, and I don't think that's a mistake. I think this disc does what you would expect. I do think because of its understable tendencies, it's not flippy, but it will require a little bit more technical ability on the forehand, especially if you have a little bit of arm speed. For those of you who are lower arm speed players and a zone is very overstable, you might just find that this flies really nice for you and still has that consistent fade. If you're throwing hard forehands often with a zone, this disc is going to be more understable for you, so it's just going to require a bit more skill, but you're going to be able to get all kinds of different lines and shapes out of it. For those of you who, seek after that beat up zone and try to like wear them in, I do think that this fits somewhere in that zone timeline of when you're throwing it. Like this, it doesn't feel very unlike a zone, and it does fly like a zone probably will at some point in its lifespan. So I think Discraft succeeded with that. I think this is going to be a popular mold. We're going to see a lot of this early on in players' bags, I think, to fill that need. It's always good to have a replaceable understable disc that fills kind of a unique slot. And we'll see if it sticks around, because the Zone OS, a bit more extreme of a disc, but after the initial hype, you don't see it as much anymore. I think this disc could have a little bit more longevity. Definitely easier to get along with for a lot wider range of skill levels. So yeah, make sure to check these out whenever they release on foundationdisc.com. You're gonna wanna try one out. There's gonna be a lot of hype surrounding these for sure, and for good reason. Good job for Discraft there. Make sure to subscribe to the Labs channel here if you wanna see more of this content. We're gonna have lots of disc reviews and other fun videos coming up soon. We'll see you next time.